truly trying to help. Like it's with positive intent. I say often that, both have positive intent for the other person, also assume positive intent when you're not just when you're getting feedback, but anytime. It's so easy to get an email and read the tone wrong. But if you start from assuming positive intent, you're going to respond in a better way. It's going to build in a positive way as opposed to in a negative way. And then you actually save so much time at the workplace when you don't spin on negativity and politics internally.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Grow IT podcast. Your host here, Alessandro Cutri, joined today by Nicole Yelsey. Today we'll be diving into her story, a little bit about what they're building over at KindWorks.ai. I definitely think it's probably one of the most unique companies I've come across on this podcast itself. And so we're just going to dive into her story, a little bit about what they're doing and building. So I'm just kind of kicking off over to you, Nicole, if you don't mind just introducing yourself to the audience and telling them a little bit about your background and then what ultimately led you to, build KindWorks.
Absolutely. Well, Alessandra, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be sharing and talking through this. So my background's in marketing and business development. I worked in the brand teams at Anheuser-Busch, University of Chicago, business development at some agencies. But I always said I had a passion for helping people be happy. And I wanted to figure out how to help people be happy. I'm generally a happy person. How do I help others be happy? And Daniel, the CEO of KindWorks, I'd worked with him at a previous startup. And when he came to me with the idea for KindWorks 4 years ago, and I started diving into the research on kindness, I'm like, this is what I've been preaching my whole career. Maybe not always calling it kindness, but finding that human connection with other people and just practicing kindness for others and self, and that you feel better and you're just happier. So started as an advisor, joined full-time, again, almost 4 years ago, and it's been an amazing ride ever since. And I'm happy to share too a little bit about how the whole idea came to be, if that's helpful.
Please.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the audience would love to hear that because you don't come across a company like yours every single day, right? So love to hear how it came in.
Well, so as I said, I met Daniel through business school at U Chicago, and he went to school to pivot from finance to product management, where he felt he could have a much more impact on the world and sense of purpose by working in product and tech. He went on after business school, after we worked together a bit, to Cisco, launched their biggest AI product. Daniel's from Colombia, and he had visa challenges, and they relocated him from San Francisco to London, where he got his master's in engineering at Oxford. He was the president of the Oxford AI Society. This is before ChatGPT and everything the way that we know AI today. Then he was meaning to move back to San Francisco, and again, visa issues, he had challenges, ended up like not being able to move back, not knowing where he's going to work, where he's going to live, kind of a crossroads, difficult moment in his life. And he came back to San Francisco, was cleaning out a storage unit, and found a bottle of wine that he gave to the front desk person. And he had this moment of connection with this stranger that just said this act of kindness. He's like, it physically had a change in my body. The man was like, no one's ever done this before. I've been here for years. I'm gonna have a date night with my wife. This is amazing. But Daniel's like, that physically changed his own sense of perspective on his own situation. He then goes on and gets that job at Amazon Alexa. They relocate him to Vancouver, but he's like, something happened there. So he starts diving into the research on kindness and finds that wasn't an accident. Like, that is proven that when you are kind for others, it boosts your oxytocin levels. You truly are more motivated. So he's like, see all these use cases for AI as the president of the Oxford AI Society that aren't necessarily helping people, plus this research on kindness. How do you bring the two together? And that's where the idea for KindWorks and Benny, the AI agent that it's built around, came to.
That's amazing. It's such a unique story too. And, it makes so much sense, right? Obviously there's so much that comes with, being kind in a workplace and being able to, use that, because there's two ways to lead, right? In most scenarios, right? You can lead as a dictator that, you can get stuff done through fear, right? And it's like you get stuff done through motivating people to not lose their job, and that's the reason why they're gonna, continue to do things. Or you can be, almost to what your guys' mission statement is, like, be a kind leader. And that means like not a leader that strays away from having tough conversations, but doing so in a way that, is helping people to, get to that next level in their career, or helping them, wanting them to do better, right? And there's definitely two different ways to go about that. And I always feel that the kind way is actually what leads to people wanting to work for you and wanting to stay there for the long term. So I'm curious to hear from your perspective, any, I know, I don't know if you can like share certain names, and that's completely fine, but if there's any like success stories of, people using, your KindWorks.ai that you'd be open to kind of share with you, I think that'd be pretty cool.
Absolutely. I can talk about a couple clients. But even before, I think what you just said really hits the nail on the head. And the other piece, what I always, we talk about is kindness isn't just be nice and just let yourself get rolled over. It is, I did a podcast recently with the former CEO of Saatchi, and I loved how he said it's caring and demanding. It's
Yeah.
but you can do both. And I think that's the key. And then that's the long-term vision. Like it still is getting, short-term results, but also the long term, how do you keep your people loyal and motivated on a long term basis? Um, so yeah, lots of success stories that we think about measuring in a couple different ways. Obviously, the product engagement, which has been really high and amazing to see, but then impact on the individual and then impact on the business as well. So Benny, the AI agent, will ask how connected do you feel, how impactful do you feel, how appreciated you feel, and whatever is important for the organization. So we measure that month over month. And then we also work with the business to say, what does success look like for you? So an example, for instance, Prosegur alarms. So it's a security system, physical alarms. We launched with their sales team,
Hmm.
and their goal is to motivate people and keep them, motivated, and then ultimately increase sales. And what we saw is not only an increase in sales, but a correlation to people who are practicing more kindness and having more sales. Hits the business impact. And then the most fun thing I see is the stories that we see and what we hear from people about, it really changed my life. And one man, for instance, came and grabbed Daniel, our CEO's arm at a conference, and he's like, I just have to tell you, not only did you improve my sales, but my relationship with my family has improved. I
Wow.
drive a motorcycle around a busy city, and I used to curse under my breath at everyone who cut me off. And now I'm like, maybe they're having a bad day. And I go into my sales meeting and I'm more motivated and I'm selling more. And that's just, one story of all of these stories that we hear of, people not only having an impact on feeling more connected, feeling more
Yeah.
appreciated, but then also their lives really changing.
Yeah, that's so amazing, right? And it's awesome when you have a product like that that's truly changing people's lives, right? And I'm sure there's a sense of fulfillment in building this, right? It's beyond, anything that you guys are doing. It's like, hey, this is our mission statement. I'm curious though, obviously being such a novel product and being so, I mean, forgive me if I'm wrong. I don't really think you guys maybe have a lot of competitors, but maybe there is. Maybe I'm just not knowledgeable on it. But just taking this to market and trying to grow your firm. Like I'm curious, like what challenges maybe came up early on for you guys when you were first trying to launch this?
Absolutely. And that's it. There's definitely people who are trying to solve connectivity at the workplace, sense of
Hmm.
motivation and culture.
Hmm.
There's no one who's doing it the same way that we are, and that holistic way of, all the different ways to practice kindness and think about it like a muscle. And the more you do it, the more it becomes a habit. And I say
Yeah.
you might work gratitude one day and you might work compassion another day, just like going to the gym and you work yoga one day and running another day. So nobody's doing it that way. I think because it is a new concept and the idea that the practice of kindness is a new concept for so many people has probably been one of our biggest barriers. I say that, kindness is both our greatest strength as a company because, people are excited about kindness, but it's also our Achilles heel because people don't really understand where it fits in the workplace always.
Hmm.
I will say
Hmm.
that's changed over the last 4 years. I've seen that change and it's expanded the understanding of it. But it's also, we're obviously a tech company first and foremost, and we are also, I believe, a content company because content about why kindness at the workplace, what even is kindness,
Yeah.
and how it's personal for everybody is really important to understand.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we're evolving more and more as, hopefully as a, as a workforce to start incorporating more of that kindness into the leaderships, right? And leadership roles, and, leaders being able to lead by that, right? I often think that there's, a difference between being nice and being kind, right? Like
Yeah.
I always say, being nice is where you see someone has something stuck in their teeth and you don't say anything because you don't want to, you want to be just nice. And then there's being kind, where you tell that person that, hey, like, go get that, you have something in your teeth,
Yes.
go clean that.
Yes.
And there's often a difference with leaders, right, too, where it's, you have to be a kind leader. And I think that's what makes people want to show up to work at the end. It makes what people want to, loyal, right? Like you said, because you can see the difference in the contrast in terms of like people wanting to show up for, jobs that they know they're going to get yelled at by a boss, and yeah, they're just trying to keep their job, versus, people that show up to, maybe even a stern leader, but he's trying to get the best out of them. He's trying to, motivate them and improve their overall career. And so,
Yes.
uh,
Truly trying to help. Like it's with positive intent. I say often that, both have positive intent for the other person, also assume positive intent when you're not just when you're getting feedback, but anytime, it's so easy to get an email and read the tone wrong. But if you start from assuming positive intent, you're going to respond in a better way. Like it's going to build in a positive way as opposed to in a negative way. And then you actually save so much time at the workplace when you don't spin on negativity and politics and internally.
yeah, I'm curious. So like, how have the trends maybe, like, evolved, right? Obviously, like, you guys, you've been building this for a while. So like, what have you seen in terms of either adoption of this, or what are you seeing in terms of just talking with different folks and maybe different prospects? What are those trends that you're noticing?
Well, like I said, I do think kindness as a concept at the workplace is more understood and more prevalent than it was 4 years ago. I went to a conference in November that was all about the kindness effect, and a lot of it was business leaders, all in New York. Still small, but it's growing. That idea of just kindness being the core to help to really be the core to solve the foundational challenges at the workplace. So I do think the conversation is changing with that. Um, Obviously, AI has changed a lot in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
It's in terms of, especially in terms of expectations of just everyone. And I really believe so. Trust is one of our core values. Everything that we build, that's at the core of everything that we do. And it's really important. And I hope a trend is that people are critically thinking about where their AI is coming from and where data is going and that. Um, because it's going to be continuing to change. I think 2025 is going to be rapidly changing even more than the last few years.
Yeah. It seems like every single year it kind of speeds up, right? From
Yes.
the last year. So I could definitely see it from that perspective. We get a lot of, different CEOs and founders that tune into the show that are always like looking for, marketing and business development advice, and kind of what are the current strategies that are working. I'm curious to get it from your perspective, because I also see you're the CMO, right? You're doing a lot of this stuff. You also have your own podcast, which we'll plug at some point. But what have you found that's been working for you guys in terms of that marketing? In terms of the marketing.
The primary thing that we do is owned content. So
Hmm.
podcasts, videos, testimonials. We're really building out our YouTube and videos this year, especially. Um,
Hmm.
One of the things that we have found is very successful, especially at our stage of kind of a scaling startup, is
Hmm.
building out the founder brands, which
Yeah.
I say that hesitantly because it is not always something that I feel the most comfortable doing, but it's
Yeah.
something that Daniel, our CEO, and myself have been really intentional about, especially over the last year. Just
Hmm.
knowing, we have a great story to tell as human beings who are building this, and so that has been one
Yeah.
of the things we've really been leaning into too.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's one of the shifts that we're seeing within the market, that we're realizing over here in our company as well, is that these founder-led brands are becoming so much more powerful because people can connect with actual people,
Yeah.
versus, company brands are great to build, right? It's obviously great to have a company brand as well. But when you think of, a company that you have maybe affinity with, right? You can think of a person instead of the actual company. You're able to build trust more, right, with the person versus an actual company. And so that's where I think we're moving towards as we continue to, evolve. And as it becomes harder and harder for companies to build brand itself as well, right? So I totally agree with you on that. I'm curious to get your. I always like to ask, my guests a question around, if you had the opportunity to, let's just say, rewind the clock and go back, 20 years to a younger self, right? What would be some advice that you'd be able to, give to your younger self, and something that you'd be willing to share with the audience in that sense?
Um,
It's a loaded
so
question, I
much.
know.
Yeah, they're saying exactly, where do I start? I think one of the things, I mean, as it relates to jobs and careers, one thing I tell people often is, this next job that you're doing, it doesn't have to be your be all end all. Like, think about where you want to go. So the other thing I'll say is write down what's important to you. I think that that's probably the core that I'd say. Think about what's important to you personally, professionally, actually write it down. And that's going to help really guide you in making decisions. And when you're
Mhm.
interviewing for jobs, when you're looking at your next career move, just keeping in mind that you're the one who's going to be doing this, so that you should be interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. It's a two-way conversation. We're all human beings. And so, but if you know what's important to you and where you want to go, then you can like build your path. And it doesn't mean that you go and you get the job that needs to be your next 20-year job, but think about how it's a stepping stone. So one thing there's only been one time in my career where I say I ran from a job instead of to a new role, a new job. And that was the point in my career where I sat down and I wrote down what was important to me. And then I was able to then see opportunities that fit in my lens. Doesn't mean you're going to get
Mhm.
every job, but it just gives you a lens to be
Yeah.
able to build the life that you want.
Yeah, I think I think that's great advice there. And it's one of those things where you almost have to be the power of being self-aware, right? And understanding what it is that you truly want, what things are important to you. I don't think a lot of people have or do exercises like that to figure those things out, right? And then they're kind of just on autopilot and just, get stuck in the routine. And you know how quick time can kind of just go by, and you're in the same spot like 3 to 4 years later, and you're like, or even 5, 10 years later, you're like, what just happened, right? And it's when you're not actively, thinking about what is actually important to you, what is it that you're actually working towards, or what is it you're actually trying to do.
Exactly. And like my example, so my two, from a professional standpoint, and I wrote this down years and years and years ago, but I want to build and grow brands and industries that I have a passion for. And I
Hmm.
want to develop people through leading by example and empathy and listening. Like I wrote that down, I don't know, many years ago. I
Yeah.
went to an agency. I got to do that in an agency, and I was the first business development person in the US and worked on so many cool brands and loved the people I
Yeah.
was working with. Then when I had my second kid and I didn't want to travel as much and, the agency growth lifestyle, I went to
Yeah.
University of Chicago, which really fit that. And it wasn't like I was actively looking, but I had my eyes and ears open. And then when I was at University of Chicago, I wasn't looking to leave at all. But when Daniel came with this idea for KindWorks, I'm like, I have to work on this. This fits so much with what I believe in. And so that's how I started as an advisor. Was actually one of the first investors too. And then we got into the Oxford Accelerator. We got, our first clients, and I
Yeah.
think it's now or never. I'm going to go full speed ahead.
That's awesome, Nicole. I always like to end with, what do you enjoy most about you do?
About what I do.
Yeah, about what you do. What is the most fulfilling thing for you?
I mean, I think probably people say this all the time when they work with great people, but it truly is the
Hmm.
people that we work with. And we've been really intentional with, who we bring on. We have a small team. And I say everyone who's both on the team and also like so many partners that we work with, not just our small team, but our investors and our clients. Like so many people have this shared passion for building the world that we see of where we can all, work better, feel better, just live better with kindness. And so it really is the people and the shared passion, and everyone has that ownership mindset that so many companies are like, this is what we want to have. Like everyone has that plus the shared
Hmm.
passion.
Yeah, and that's what ultimately builds a business, people, right? So when you got good people, you can it's a reflection of the business, right? So I love it. I think that's a perfect note to end on, Nicole. Thank you so much for coming on and joining us for our show. It's been a pleasure, getting the chance to hear a little bit more about your story and what you guys are building. I love the mission statement. I'm definitely a big fan of what you guys are doing, and hoping continued success in 2025 and beyond. If people are listening to this and they're like, "Hey, how can we, reach out to you? What are maybe some good places to follow you? What are some of your links? I know you have a podcast too. Like, this is just a time for you to kind of tell people where to go find you."
Absolutely. So our website's definitely the best place. That is KindWorks.ai is the website. There you can book a demo. KindWorks.ai/podcast, for instance, is our podcast, but you can also find that on our website, and all of our social links. So LinkedIn and Instagram are our primary, KindWorks.ai. You can find us there, as well as feel free to connect with me as well.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure to include all of those in the description. Thanks again, Nicole. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you guys.
It's
If
been
you
a
did make
pleasure.
it all the way to the end, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and go check out Nicole and the team.
Thanks so much.
Mm-hmm.